Alison, look, you're the retail expert here. What advice can you give to retailers, ahead of what's going to be obviously a unique Christmas period this year?
So Phil, have you started your Christmas shopping?
No, I haven't yet.
No, well, you need to speed up because essentially consumers are starting a lot earlier. So apparently a third of shoppers plan to start earlier and a quarter have already started. So what we're seeing that Christmas is a much longer lead time as shoppers are sort of starting that purchasing much earlier on. The other second big thing is obviously around e-commerce. So e-commerce is now 30% of total retail sales. So that's gone up 10% from last year. So there's going to be a lot more online shopping. And then the third area, I think really sort of based on the macroeconomic environment and what's going on at the moment, is people are much more value conscious. So there's a much higher likelihood, apparently 73% of consumers saying that they will consider buying a different product. So just kind of being really aware of that potential switching and less loyalty going on in the market.
I think that kind of that idea of kind of like more switching, kind of less loyalty is something that I think Google can really help with, and particularly it's where our technology smarts and our kind of audience insights can really help. And I think that, but we tend to think of that as being something that you get from search, and obviously that's true. But I think also YouTube can help with this as well. And I think importantly, it's understanding that link between YouTube and search. So one interesting thing is that we know that 80% of people that are searching on google.com are also watching videos as they go through their purchase journey.
And I think we've really seen that from a retail perspective, because I think historically a couple of years ago we thought about YouTube really just as an entertainment platform, and now we know that 9 out of 10 consumers actually do some of their research and discovery on YouTube, and 40% have actually gone on and purchased as a result.
So Alison, clearly this Christmas period is going to be challenging for a lot of retailers. What's your advice for them in terms of how they can adapt and drive sales?
So I think there are two main points really. The first is really, in order to capture all the demand in the market, it's going to be a much longer lead time. And so rather than thinking about that peak period as sort of end of November, December, think about it for a much longer stretch. And the second area is, again, in order to capture all the demand, is be really agile and think about all the insights that are in market, because they are changing on a daily basis. We've got a great tool, Rising Retail Categories, that can help to surface what those trends are. And we saw some really quirky trends in March, like a massive uptake in pizza ovens and hot tubs. So we don't know what they're going to be for this Christmas, but just staying on top of those insights and that data is really critical.
This year, the UK has been on YouTube. We've really seen audiences grow, and I think it's been a real tipping point, and that's really supported by the data as well. So if you look at the Ofcom Media Nations report, last year in 2019, all adults, according to Ofcom, were watching 37 minutes of YouTube a day, and now in April of this year, they were watching 46 minutes. So a real increase kind of in 2020. And importantly, actually, that doesn't include viewing on the television. And that is, I think, really critical, because the mega trend of this year has been the shift to watching YouTube in the living room, with actually 20 million Britons now watching YouTube on the television sets. I think that's a really interesting thing to think about.
I think that mainstream point is really interesting, because I think about the sort of age profile, and someone like my mum, who'd never in a million years would have watched YouTube at the beginning of the year. Now she'll watch her National Theatre or her ballet, and sort of YouTube's become a part of her viewing schedule.
Look, absolutely. I mean, my mum's totally the same. And I think actually one of the interesting things is that growth in audience viewing across all demos, not just those kind of youth groups that we might have been associated with in the past. You mentioned kind of like the more, what YouTube's been traditionally known for, which is kind of more reach. I think reach also is something really to consider as we go into this year's peak. I mean, and really, I think kind of YouTube's role as a cost-effective reach partner. One of the things that we've been looking at as an advertiser, obviously Google, one of the largest advertisers in the world, is the role of YouTube and television together. And that's something that we've really been thinking about over the last few years. A lot of our studies are showing us effectively that when you add YouTube to television, it really helps drive incremental reach, but also as it does so very, very cost effectively. And for those of you that perhaps haven't used YouTube that much in the past, trying something new can sometimes feel like a risk. But I think in this year, not trying something new might just be the riskiest thing of all.
So tell me, what have you been watching in the Mars household then recently?
Well, the Mars household has been watching on YouTube. Well, if you're my kids, they're watching at the moment Dance Moms, right, which is a kind of show about a dance troupe in the US, super popular, and they've kind of been binge watching that for kind of like really for months now. And then like for me, well, me and my wife, we've been increasingly watching more YouTube on the TV. Well, what about you, Alison? What have you been watching?
Bit of a combo actually in the Lomax household. There's a lot of football interest and activity, Man United in particular, and then I've been geeking out with YouTube/fashion. So there's obviously a wealth of fashion content, and with all the fashion shows really being digital, some of the London Fashion Week content is fantastic. And what was really interesting this year is how differently brands thought about how they do that kind of catwalk experience, obviously when people weren't physically together. So Halpin, for example, rather than using models in a physical format, they used 21 key workers, so train drivers, nurses, people from care homes, all had their own stories and they were modelling their collection, which was amazing.